So not only did the world's largest bank, a $4 trillion giant, just launch Bitcoin-backed loans, but of course, Michael Saylor has just come out with a brand new product that he's calling Stretch. And this new product, it's very different to Strife, Stride, and Strike that he launched recently, which is attacking the $300 trillion bond market, because Stretch, this is attacking the $120 trillion market for money. So today we're going to be breaking down just how much capital could Michael Saylor's new products actually attract, because again, there is $900 trillion of wealth in the world. So today we want to not only break down what this new Michael Saylor product is, but also talk a little bit more about Jamie Dimon's Bitcoin backflip with his announcement that we're going to talk about. I want Opti to chime in. Where do you want to take this show first, Opti? What do you want to talk about? Saylor's big news or Jamie Dimon's Bitcoin backflip?
Let's start with Jamie Dimon, because that one's going to be a little quicker rip, and then we got a lot of stuff to kind of break down exactly what Saylor is doing. It seems like an incredible move. Of course, I think this is above Luke and ours pay grade here, but we're going to try to break this down for you guys as best as we can. And of course, we have Eric here, Eric Gilbert-Williams, author of Coin Lords, a new sci-fi book that's about to drop. So interesting stories at the end of the show. But Luke, let's dive into Jamie Dimon. Let's break down this news, and we'll talk about it, and then really break down, I think, the more bigger news story coming out of Saylor himself.
Yeah, so of course people will read this headline that we've got up on screen. JP Morgan, this is again $4 trillion bank, is now considering crypto-backed loans as traditional banks warm to digital assets. So many people probably saw that and thought, hang on a minute, JP Morgan? Is that the same JP Morgan with the CEO Jamie Dimon that called Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme back in 2017? And it is. It's the same guy. Jamie Dimon has gone full circle from 2017, calling Bitcoin a decentralized Ponzi scheme, saying it's only used by money launderers and drug criminals, to now coming out and literally offering Bitcoin-backed loans. I saw this and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And I just think the magnitude of the pivots is what is catching attention on Wall Street, because it's not just, Jamie Dimon going from skepticism to strategy, but let's not forget Larry Fink, BlackRock. We have a lot of pivots we want to talk about today, but let's talk about what just happened now. So according to the reports, JP Morgan plans to offer a secured lending product where clients can use Bitcoin holdings as collateral. At first, the loan service would be using ETFs, and later it might include some direct products like Bitcoin. So that'd be interesting if it's on-chain Bitcoin, but in the beginning, it looks as if it's just going to be Bitcoin ETFs. This would be like BlackRock's IBIT Bitcoin ETF or Fidelity's ETF. I don't think it matters exactly what they're using to begin with. Obviously, we're self-custody Maximus here at Simply Bitcoin, but I think it's just the fact that they're pivoting into Bitcoin. I think that's the signal here that I think is really fascinating, because Opti, we also covered recently the fact that JP Morgan was buying hundreds of millions of dollars of MicroStrategy stock. Again, this came out just recently. We saw hundreds of millions of dollars of MicroStrategy stock bought by yours truly, Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan. And now they're coming out with this new Bitcoin-backed product. At the time, I think Jamie Dimon was speaking at a World Economic Forum conference a few months ago. And he said, I never, ever, ever want to be asked about Bitcoin again, and I won't talk about it again in public. That's what he said. This was just months ago. And at the same time, he was quietly loading up on hundreds of millions of dollars of MicroStrategy stock. And now, once his bags were packed full of MicroStrategy stock, he comes out with this. We're now going to see Bitcoin-backed lending products. I think that's pretty interesting. And I think I would love to get your take on this, Opti. What do you think comes next? And why are we seeing this now?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the more interesting angle of this, of course, the huge part is this is basically one of the world's largest banks, if not the world's largest bank. One of the biggest in the U.S. obviously them dropping, or at least talking about dropping, a Bitcoin backed loan, I think is kind of a sign of the times. It's really showing you can't ignore Bitcoin. And that is probably the story here. Jamie Dimon, known skeptic of Bitcoin forever, has said probably all the horrible things about Bitcoin, has very recently pivoted into Bitcoin. You saw this slow trickle. At first, he's like, hey, you know, I don't like this Bitcoin thing, but I'll reserve your right to buy it. You shouldn't buy it, but if you want to buy it, we'll sell it to you. Kind of just like classic banker, right? You know, you're like, all right, I get it. Now, I think the interesting part about this is what Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time. It's the idea of Bitcoin as pristine collateral. Now, of course, we love the meme of the separation of money and state. We think Bitcoin is an uncorrelated, you know, completely detached from the traditional financial system. And so to see the banks kind of come here, try to find their fees, you know, try to pivot their way so that they can also get some Bitcoin exposure is obviously something that makes us feel a little icky, but it does essentially also rubber stamp the idea that we've been talking about as Bitcoiners for a long time. Bitcoin is pristine collateral, or as other people say, you know, perfect money here. And now that we have the biggest banks in the world acknowledging Bitcoin in a way that we've all acknowledged it, yes, it probably doesn't mean anything to us here because, you know, a lot of us became adults during the 2008 financial crisis. And we don't forget. We don't forget what happened in 2008. And a lot of us put the blame on the banks and the people in charge. And now that they're coming in, we're like, dude, who cares about what Jamie Dimon says? Like, why is Simply Bitcoin always applauding the banks come in? Well, it is a stamp of approval. It is the signal that this industry is maturing. And further, whether you like Jamie Dimon or not, whether you think Jamie Dimon's a good or a bad guy, when Jamie Dimon says something, it means something. It sends a signal to everyone out there that, oh, wow, we should probably look into something similar. We should probably look at this as a market signal of things to come. And as I was telling Luke this morning, when Jamie Dimon says something, it's almost akin to when Larry Fink says something or when the president of the United States says something. This is the gravity of their words. And for a long time, Jamie Dimon has been a skeptic around Bitcoin. He hasn't liked Bitcoin. And now he's like, you know what? I think by next year, we're going to have some Bitcoin backed loans. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it does also breed a whole new angle to the Bitcoin industry. And it is competition. It's competition from the banks coming into the Bitcoin industry. And it's also going to make the Bitcoin companies themselves have to become more competitive to see who will attract the most capital and also keep the most customers. So I'm all for competition, even if it does come from, you know, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, etc. I think you guys all heard my, you know, personal stories with Jamie Dimon, or rather someone that worked at JP Morgan. So I always find it interesting when I hear stuff come out of JP Morgan and when Jamie Dimon says things around Bitcoin. It really is one of those, for better or worse, defining moments. It shows you that this is, you know, a real thing. And I think this is also showing that the snowball effect that we're all kind of waiting for, it's happening right now. And of course, everyone really wants to know, like, what's going on with the price, man. We have all of this good news. Someone in the chat's like, with all this good news, I'm telling you, super cycle in 2026. I don't know about all that. All I'm seeing is we are starting to see the dominoes fall in our favor. You know, are you going to get tired of winning? I don't know if this is what winning feels like, but it does seem like every other day, or rather every other week, and obviously every new month, someone else is bending the knee. And I think that's just showing that this Bitcoin thing is catching on, and you probably want to hold some. Yes, you may not like the bankers. Yes, you may not like presidents and nation states and central banks, but they're starting to acknowledge Bitcoin. And for better or worse, that just shows everyone else. That's a signal that, hey, they might want to buy some Bitcoin. Now, I could probably ramble about Jamie Dimon for a while, so I'm going to pass it over to Eric before we dive into what Saylor has done. Eric, what's your thoughts about Jamie Dimon or JP Morgan announcing a Bitcoin back? And let's be clear, it is a little shitcoiny. They also said ETH, but no one's going to use that. You know, maybe some of the ETH shitcoiners will, but like, that's not the signal here. The signal here is Bitcoin backed loans coming out of JP Morgan, most likely next year. So, Eric, what's your thoughts on this?
I got you. So, you know, when we look at the micro, we get excited. Obviously, a lot of people get excited about the price and the price and the price. And I really want to just zoom out for a second and look at the macro. Where is this headed? Why did Bitcoin come to fruition in the first place? And how is what's happening today relevant to the bigger picture, right? For me, I got involved in 2017 from the ideological and the philosophical perspective. Like what is the impact on our culture and our society that this could have? And if we look at 100 years in the future, what does the world look like when Bitcoin has reached its end goal? It forces us to question, well, what is that end goal? And reverse engineer that to where we're at today. And so you could say on one side, any publicity is good publicity for Bitcoin. And I think that's pretty true to say. And, I remember back in the day, some of my really wealthy and smart friends were like, oh, Bitcoin's not going to succeed. Government's never going to let it, go full dot. That's anytime someone says that or hints towards it means they don't understand the big vision. They don't understand what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is the alternative. And when we see, for example, every time China would ban Bitcoin, I thought it was great news because it's back on the headlines. Anytime Jamie Dimon would say something about Bitcoin, that's great. It's back on the headlines. It supports the narrative that this is bigger than any one person. It's bigger than any government. It's never going to go away. And so what we see today is sort of the embodiment of that, where some of the biggest opposition is being converted, right? And it's out of obviously they're trying to make money and they still don't get the big picture. Like a bank loan, a fiat loan backed by Bitcoin, like you don't get it, right? It's just, he's accusing in the past a Bitcoin of being a big Ponzi, but now he's, a part of the biggest Ponzi of all, which is looking at how to capitalize more fiat out of short-term movements and people getting excited about Bitcoin. So I'm not going to criticize him for that, even though I could, because I think that the greater picture is more important. And that's that some of the biggest voices of opposition are now, they've given up trying to be opposition and now just trying to join the money train for themselves. And all that is a lot of debatable on a few different angles. But to me, on that 100-year perspective, it represents that, like I was always saying, and like everyone here has always been saying, you can't stop Bitcoin. You can't have an entity that's bigger than it. You can't change public opinion that we want to have more transparency, less corruption, more control, more value placed on our own property, which ultimately gets represented monetarily, which if it's in fiat, it's always going down. If it's in Bitcoin, it's holding steady. And those truths are stronger than any opposition and any force that tries to hold against it. That's why Bitcoin was invented in the first place. It's because we were fed up of the system and fed up of people, manipulating our money supply and taking advantage of us, fill in the blank. There's so many ways that can't be explained. So I think this is really great. From the 100-year perspective of Bitcoin reaching its end goal, this is important. Jamie Dimon coming around, it's very important. Is he perfect? Is the narrative perfect? Obviously not. But this is a really big win towards the big picture. And it's one more brick in the wall to cement the fact that Bitcoin is unavoidable. It's inevitable. It's a Thanos quote, like Bitcoin is inevitable. And people are starting to realize that. We're seeing that in politics. We're seeing in business. We're seeing in finance. We're seeing in philosophy. And I think that it's important to not so much look at what does that do for the price of Bitcoin, but look at what does it do for the narrative of Bitcoin and the implementation of Bitcoin ideology, a Bitcoiner ideology into our mainstream systems. And obviously people get excited about money and that's always, a hype point, and that's fine. You know what, come into the system because of that. But now let's get you educated on where the world's actually headed, because getting 2 or 3x on your fiat, is bullshit. It doesn't mean anything compared to the bigger vision when Bitcoin is the only currency that really matters, period. And so anyways, I'm very, you can say bullish on the news and on the show and on the narrative. So yeah, that's some of my thoughts. And I got to read through the comments here and see what's going on. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, no, Eric, and you said a very important phrase there. What is Bitcoin's role in the future? And I think that's like the perfect pivot into what Saylor's doing. And again, he's been doing a masterclass here. I am trying to learn in real time everything that Saylor's doing. And he just dropped a new product. And I think there is a lot of Bitcoiners that having a hard time with what Saylor's doing. They're maybe thinking, hey, he's fiatizing Bitcoin. Other Bitcoiners like, no, he is like tapping Bitcoin into the engine. And actually, Luke, let's bring up one of these, because this one is like the most hyperbolic breakdown of this. So let's read this here, and this will kind of give you an idea of what some Bitcoiners are thinking. And I got some other tweets here to kind of explain this in less poetic terms. So Adam Livingston, I brought him up on the show. He is doing, a lot of content talking about Bitcoin and corporate treasuries. And this is his breakdown of it. Again, it is a little poetic at times and maybe using some buzzwords, but it paints a good picture here. So he goes, strategy announces stretch, or STRC. And you're about to understand a financial engineering move so insane it makes traditional equity look like monopoly money. STRC, aka stretch, is Strategy's variable rate series A perpetual stretch preferred stock. It's not equity. It's not debt. It's a new financial life form optimized to do one thing: convert fiat into Bitcoin at velocity. Stretch pays a variably monthly dividend starting at 9% per annum, compounded if unpaid and paid in cash. But here's the kicker: Strategy can tweak the rate each month to keep Stretch trading near $100. Like a synthetic stablecoin with yield, you're not buying stock, you're buying a yield-targeted Bitcoin conduit. Every share of Stretch is fully redeemable by Strategy at $101 plus accrued dividends, meaning they can absorb fiat at scale, dollar cost average into Bitcoin with precision, and redeem when Bitcoin mooned and their balance sheet glows like a uranium core. This isn't capital formation, it's monetary warfare. What happens if a fundamental change event occurs? Stretch holders can force a buyback, a cash repurchase, $100 plus accrued dividends, built-in exit optionality, downside defense, upside asymmetry. It's an institutional grade Bitcoin-backed bond with liquidity control. And then just to wrap this one up, because he goes on, he goes, but here's the real weapon. The liquidation preference adjusts daily. It floats to the higher of $100 flat, the latest sale price, a 10-day VWAP. This means the longer Stretch performs, the harder it becomes to issue it cheaply. Every issuance builds price gravity upward. So I'm sure you've seen the Saylor, or rather the Strategy pictograph of the different gears and torque, and you're probably like me, like, what exactly going on here? It looks like Saylor is tapping or created a new product that is essentially low volatility, tapping into a whole new market. Now, actually, I didn't pull it up. Let me pull up this. Actually, do you have that pictograph that I shared with you earlier, Luke? Because I can't seem to find it here. Let me try to find it. Anyways, I'll find it when Luke starts going. And then Mark Moss goes, continuing to innovate with Bitcoin-backed products. Stretch is engineered for low volatility and high yield by design. Essentially a high-yield savings account, roughly 9% APY paid monthly, coming for high-yield bank accounts and money market funds. Tens of trillions TAM. And then going further, we had Dylan Leclerc here this morning go, money market funds is a big market, guys. So he's tapping into another huge market. We've seen all the products Saylor's been doing. He's essentially layering, these different products for different aspects of the market, trying to tap in, trying to get as much zombie capital to come into Bitcoin. And then we have Joe Consorti. Strategy's new variable rate preferred Stretch has a 9% initial yield, of course, and is targeting money market funds. In comparison, money market funds is a $7.05 trillion market, about 25% of all U.S. treasuries, and it's yielding just 4.25%. Bitcoin is about to swallow the fixed income market. Now, there's a lot of people wondering what exactly is he building, but Jesse Meyer goes, Saylor is going to offer cash holders better interest rates than money market funds, all powered by Bitcoin. And here is where people are like, did Saylor just build a stable coin that is backed by Bitcoin instead of treasuries? So here's the comment. Stretch is essentially a stable coin backed by Bitcoin instead of U.S. treasuries. And MVK goes, no, it is a U.S. treasury replacement backed by Bitcoin for people seeking fixed income. And Preston Pish drops the target. Guys, I can't tell you that I know exactly what Saylor built here, but it is a very interesting product, and it looks like he is tapping into a whole new market. Again, a whole new investor with these different products. And of course, the torque, the mechanism that he does this is essentially, you know, converting fiat money on one hand and turning it into Bitcoin, which essentially means a bunch of capital is going to flow into Bitcoin. A bunch of capital that wasn't able to get into Bitcoin can now potentially look at strategy and all the different products, and it can get into Bitcoin. Now, Luke, I'm going to find this this picture. Oh, no, the other. There's another one. There's another one. Let me find it. You rip it a little bit, and then we'll pass it to Eric. Yeah, that one. There we go. Okay, zoom into that a little bit. And Mark Moss, well, really, this is from Saylor's presentation. And you can see here at the very, very bottom, how small this stretch product is compared to these different markets. And of course, you have US dollar bank accounts at, what is this? $18.3 trillion. You have money market funds at $7.4 trillion. And you have short-term treasuries at, what's that? $5.8 trillion. It's really hard for me to read this. I'm colorblind. We have commercial paper at 1.4 trillion, and then stable coins at 250 billion, and then this product 500 million. Again, all of this capital now has a new place that it can end up, and that is in stretch. And of course, that is eventually in Bitcoin when Saylor is buying Bitcoin. So it is financial engineering, but I think it's financial engineering at its best, built on Bitcoin, pumping fiat into Bitcoin, converting literally, you know, useless dollars into what we were talking about earlier, pristine collateral, perfect money, however you want to frame it. I don't know. Saylor does seem to be doing a masterclass here. There are some people that are saying we got to stop this monstrosity that is Michael Saylor's different products. I think it's, as Eric said earlier, it's all good for Bitcoin. Now, will I be buying these products? No, I just want to buy Bitcoin. But, you know, hey, for people that want Bitcoin exposure and need it in fixed income products, it looks like Saylor is just creating specific products for specific investors. And again, it's hard to view this and not think this is good for Bitcoin. Anyways, Luke, what's your thoughts on this? And then we'll let Eric rip it. I think you're muted, Luke. Oh, maybe your mic died. Okay, fix your mic, and then Eric, we'll go to Eric. Eric, do you understand the financial engineering that Saylor is doing?
You know, there's a lot of details there that I'm not an expert at, and I can't comment on technically, you know, correctly. But I'll answer your question is yes, I understand that the financial engineering that Saylor is doing is to support Bitcoin in its end goal, whether it's directly or indirectly. And I think that's the short summary that is fairly accurate. So, and again, I'm going to zoom out to the, you know, whether it's the 20-year or the 100-year perspective, when Bitcoin reaches its end goal, you know, what does the world look like? And what is that end goal? And I think it's really important to analyze that and explore it and understand a little bit deeper, like, where is this headed beyond just number go up and beyond just, you know, having self-custody over our own wealth. And obviously that's fundamental, you know, having our own custody and having control over our own property and our own products, in other words, money, and represented as well through Bitcoin. That's the primary that is, you know, changing everything, and the inability to disrupt that money supply and to not allow corruptive mindsets to exploit. Obviously, those are fundamental. But what's beyond that? Because there is a beyond that, first of all, right? And in the future, to me, and we don't know what it's going to look like when Bitcoin reaches its end goal. And I think there's a fun debate that we could have of what is that end goal. But for me, anyways, I look at what does the world look like when money supply can't be corrupted? What's the impact that has over our current political landscape? And what impact does that have on the politicians that do get elected, coming, again, reverse engineering it to who then would want to be a politician in a world where they can't manipulate money supply, either for their benefit or for constituents or fill in the blank? What kind of political leader then do we attract? And what does government look like? And to me, those are the really important things to factor in. And so when we look at, you know, what's happening with MicroStrategy or Diamond or Saylor, there's a span of time between now and the end goal. And whether that's like I said, a 20-year end goal or a 100-year end goal, whatever that end goal is, there's a span of time between now and then. And in there, we're going to see a whole lot of crazy, weird things like China banning Bitcoin forever, and then all of a sudden allowing people to hold it, or Diamond speaking against it, and all of a sudden launching a product, and interesting minds and people like Saylor coming out with, you know, interesting mechanisms to be involved in this way or that way or the other way. And there's going to be a plethora of these types of products that come out you know, almost endlessly between now and the time that Bitcoin reaches its end goal. And you could say that in the end goal perspective, none of this really matters because fiat and different types of monies aren't really going to be as relevant. And maybe there's going to be some spin-off, like maybe everyone's on Lightning, or maybe someone's on something different but related or better than Lightning on the network that's you know, enhanced. Or maybe there are going to be little currencies here and there that run around, you know, cute little currencies, and they're all tied to Bitcoin as the primary. We don't really know exactly, but we do know that what we're seeing with MicroStrategy and Saylor is the beginning. Still, we're at the early stages, the beginning of hundreds, or if not thousands, of different products that are either currently in development or going to launch soon that fill in that span of time between now and when Bitcoin does reach its end goal. So I think it's interesting to explore them, right? And obviously, like, holding Bitcoin is the ultimate. So why would we play with anything else? But, you know, I have a little, I'm Canadian. I have a little bit in TSFA, and there's like, well, how can I, obviously Canada isn't very tax friendly to Bitcoin, and it's frustrating. And it's like, there's a couple weird things about that. So, you know, I'm interested in playing with a couple, like the little tiny bit of my portfolio that is on a system and is in the market to get that into Bitcoin as well. Because it's either sell it all and put it in Bitcoin, or keep a little bit in there and play and explore. And, you know, as long as the majority is focused on the right ideology of like holding Bitcoin self-custody and having that as a primary, it's more just an interesting experiment to play with MicroStrategy's product, or play with a different product. There's a couple, you know, cool products I saw in Canada as well by Bitcoin entrepreneurs, and I think it's interesting to explore them a little bit. Is it relevant to the end game? Yeah, it is, because right now it's a way to bring in more people and to bring in more awareness to Bitcoin as a concept. And from there, we can explore and educate people more on what's the end goal, and how does this affect everyone in our day-to-day lives, in our next year trajectory, 1, 2, 3 years, in the next generation to come. All of our children right now that are learning about the word Bitcoin, when they learn about Bitcoin, this is what's of primary importance to me. When people hear about Bitcoin for the first time, what are they associated with? You know, I remember I was in the Uber, in an Uber car the other day, and the driver asked me what I do, and I said, well, I'm producing a TV show for Bitcoin and Bitcoiners, and you know, we'll talk about that later. But I mentioned that to him, and he says, oh, Bitcoin, when's the right time to buy? Right, and obviously the answer is yesterday, and the second best answer is today. But as soon as I talked to him about, but as soon as he asked me, I said, look, it's not about the price. It's not about the price of fiat, because when Bitcoin reaches its end goal, there is no more fiat. There is no more Bitcoin compared to a different currency. There's Bitcoin as the only way to buy and do anything and interact in this world, period. And so I explained to him all of this philosophy, and he said, oh, that's interesting, but when do you think the price is going up? Right? He doesn't get it. And most people don't get it. And when we think about our children, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old, when they hear about Bitcoin, like, what are they associating it with? And so, you know, products like the MicroStrategy product are great to bring people in. And then we get to educate them through the show and through other, you know, mechanisms about, you know, what's next, and make sure that they get in for the right reasons, not to just flip it in a year for a quick gain on a stinky fiat. So I think it's important in the bigger picture. And that's some of my thoughts on it philosophically.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, Luke, I think your mic is back working. So thoughts on this?
I think that I love the fact that Eric zooms out there and we're talking about the bigger picture, because again, I think so many people are just stuck in the mindset of, like you said, Eric, Bitcoin is just a number go up stock or a lottery ticket, or it's a get rich quick scheme. And I was actually trying to explain this to somebody over a double day dinner here in France just recently. And I tried to explain it to them. I said, no, look, Bitcoin is not a get rich quick thing. It's a not get poor slowly thing. That's what it is. And I said that line. It's like, Bitcoin is a don't get poor slowly line. They're like, hang on a minute, what does that mean? And people just don't understand the fact that their money is going down forever. And again, I think when we should really be zooming out and thinking about Bitcoin on a 100-year time horizon. And I think so many people today, they have this conception that, we're going to be seeing diminishing returns. And, you know, oh, because Bitcoin is seeing smaller and smaller bull runs, that means that these are going to continue moving forward into the future. But I strongly disagree. I really love this stock to FOMO chart. And it actually shows that Bitcoin's going to reach a tipping point or an inflection point, and the price of Bitcoin is actually going to go up exponentially. And this is kind of my base case. My base case is that we're going to see Bitcoin's volatility actually increase from here. And I just think of it purely from an adoption standpoint. Like, Bitcoin today is adopted by less than 1% of the world. It's a $2.5 trillion asset. There's $900 trillion of wealth in the world. Again, I'm conservative. I say to people, okay, why don't you assume Bitcoin just gets 10% of the world's wealth? That's $90 trillion. Do we really think that it's going to take Bitcoin like 300 years to reach $90 trillion of wealth? Because the people who believe in diminishing returns, that's what they believe. That's what they are saying. It's taken Bitcoin 15 years to reach $2.5 trillion of wealth. Do we think it's going to take another 15 years to go to 5 trillion? And then another 30 years to get to 10 trillion? Do we really think it's going to take us 30 more years to go from where we are today to a $10 trillion market cap, a $500,000 Bitcoin price? I don't. But this is what the diminishing returns maximalists believe. Even the power law, it's slightly more bullish than that, but I still think directionally it's really dangerous and it's really incorrect. And I don't think it's thinking about or accounting for how not only monies get adopted and how we transition from one money to another, but these kind of linear frameworks, they don't actually account for how technologies get adopted, and that is in exponential curves. And again, nobody could have predicted how quickly the automobile displaced horses in the early 1900s. They were made absolutely obsolete in 15 years. Nobody could have predicted just how quickly digital emails obsoleted physical mail. Again, it happened in a matter of decades. The same with the smartphone. Completely obsoleted the multi-decade, if not 100-year-old established physical telecommunications network. Displaced in a decade. Bitcoin's going to be doing the exact same thing. And I just think most people aren't prepared for what comes next. And they're not thinking about Bitcoin the way they should be thinking about Bitcoin. And again, I think all models are going to be broken. All models are wrong. Like Eric said earlier, put the majority of your wealth in self-custody Bitcoin. But the one model that I think is somewhat directionally correct is this stock to flow model. I think stock to FOMO, sorry. I'm talking about the stock to FOMO, not the stock to flow. But I think this is the most kind of directionally correct model. Who knows what's going to happen or when Bitcoin reaches that tipping point? I just encourage people to be prepared to wake up tomorrow and see Bitcoin at $50,000 or to see Bitcoin at $5 million tomorrow. I don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen or what it's going to look like or whether it's 500,000 tomorrow or 1 million tomorrow. But I just think the fair value for Bitcoin is not even in the ballpark of hundreds of thousands of dollars per coin. It's not even in the fair ballpark of millions of dollars per coin. It's not even, we're not even talking yet. If you're trying to offer me $10 million of Bitcoin, I'm not letting the majority of my stack go until it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars in today's purchasing power. And I think that's kind of the ballpark where we can start talking. And again, I don't think this is just, I'm not just making up numbers or pulling them out of the wazoo. I mean, I'm just saying I expect Bitcoin to get 10, 20, 30% of the world's money. And this bull run, we've seen something we've never seen before. We've seen portals open. We're seeing black holes opened, where Michael Saylor is now opening up these portals for MicroStrategy to attack the $115 trillion equity market. He's got Strife, Stride, and Strike all launched this year that is actively attacking the $300 trillion bond market. And now we have his brand new product, Stretch, which is attacking the $120 trillion money market. Again, I've been speculating about this world of, Bitcoin grabbing half of the world's $900 trillion of assets for a long time. A lot of people have said, Luke, your projections for 2030, they're way too bullish. I don't see how Bitcoin can attack all of these different markets. And I think now we're just starting to see the infrastructure being built. And I think a lot of this capital, now that it has the option to flow and move, it will. And again, we have this real estate sector on this chart. Let's not forget Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac just recently got forced to accept Bitcoin and crypto as down payment for mortgages. So every single one of these massive buckets of money that we're looking at now has an open port straight into Bitcoin. And again, hey, it's just my thought, Opti, but I strongly think we're going to see something much more in the realm of the stock to FOMO if we're thinking about Bitcoin's next 5 or 10 years. But I'd love your thoughts on it. What do you think?
I mean, I am an S-curve maxi here. So as much as I always say Luke is the most bullish content creator out there, it's hard to get more bullish than just saying, hey, you think Bitcoin has been performing well? Just wait till it actually hits the S curve and it goes up forever. Soon. No, if you wait, well, you rewind this a little bit. We do have to move on. We're running really long. All right, look at the one on the right. Who knows how long? What's this? 2024. This one looks a little old. So 2026-ish, you know, it's starting to pick up. So if this is true, what, 2030, everyone's saying diminishing returns, 2030, it's going even more vertical. Like, hey, I would love to see that. That is where Luke's $7 billion per coin, incredibly highly bull-hearted Bitcoin price prediction might actually take hold. It's absolutely nuts, just to say the least. All right, guys. We went super long. We gotta keep ripping. I'm sure Luke and I could keep bull posting on this channel today. But before we go on, I do want to give actually before we go on, guys, smash the like button. Comment on this video if you think this is products that Bitcoin needs, or is this the fiatization of Bitcoin? Is this gonna blow up? I want to see it in the comments here. I want to see your guys' opinion, of course. Hit the subscribe button, guys. We are dropping the best content, the most content out of any Bitcoin YouTube channel, period. And we got more on the way, guys. We got some interesting stuff for you guys. But before I go to the next segment, I got to give a huge shout out to our boys over at Bitcoin Well. Make sure you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply. And when you sign up, use the promo code SimplyBTC, and you get 3 chances to win 1 million sats in the Bitcoin wishing well. We love them because they are the only Bitcoin exchange, Bitcoin platform that will never rug pull you. They never hold your Bitcoin. They've never held your Bitcoin. Once the fiat goes through, they send you the Bitcoin. You know, set up a DCA and forget it. Or if you're in the market for, you know, a big, huge one-time smash buy, make sure you check out the Bitcoin Well Infinite product where you can buy $50,000 at a time. They'll give you white glove service, walk you through the whole process, make sure if you are brand new how to correctly hold your Bitcoin. So they're not just going to sell you Bitcoin and then you're off to fend for yourself. White glove service again. Go check out bitcoinwell.com/simply. All right, guys, on that note, I got to keep it ripping.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not. allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on StampSeed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today.
Yeah, I'm getting trolled hard in the chat right now. I see you guys. Anyways, we're over here on Clark Moody's dashboard. The current Bitcoin price is $118,660 per Bitcoin, which is a decline of negative 3.6% from all-time high. And I'm still getting text messages of, bro, it's over. I'm like, oh, are we looking at the same price chart here? What's going on here? Anyways, the current block height is 906,713, and the market cap in fiat terms is $2.36 trillion. And we're not even at 10% of the gold market cap, guys. There's still a lot of room to run. Anyways, we got a funny, funny video here from Janet Yellen. Everyone probably remembers everyone loves Janet Yellen, okay? We all love Janet Yellen. And she was on Squawk Box this morning talking about the recent crypto bills, sharing her concerns. Look, I'm going to just let her do the speaking, and then we'll chat about it.
Ask you two other quick questions. We've talked for many years, Secretary, about crypto. I think you have been a critic, or at least a skeptic, and we have watched crypto just explode. Obviously, the Genius Act just passing last week. What do you think now?
Well, I have concerns about some of the legislation that was passed. I convened, I believe it was in 2022, the President's Working Group on Financial Markets to make recommendations about the appropriate regulation of stable coins. And I'm pleased to see that Congress did take up that topic and that a framework has been put in place. But unfortunately, I think it contains significant weaknesses. And so it's not all that I would have wanted to see. And that does give me concerns about what the role of stable coins, for example, will be going forward, whether or not there are adequate controls in place. And I believe they present financial stability risks that should be addressed.
All right. Lot to unpack there. I mean, I do agree with her on one part. It's not everything I would like to see either, Janet Yellen, but I think I'm taking a totally different view from her. Like, from what that clip looks like, they sound absolutely terrified. And if you heard the very end of that, financial stability risk, we've heard this statement said before, that Bitcoin and stable coins, if it's too intertwined in the traditional financial system, somehow it's going to be our fault that the TradFi system blows up. I don't think that's how this works. If anything, there's financial risk to the central banks out there, because people are going to wake up that they don't want to hold fiat dollars. They're like, why am I going to hold this money that steals from me? So every conversation that they have, I think, is an admission of what they want to do. And they're really just exposing themselves every time they get paraded around out there. And, look, actually, I'm not going to say that. Nico, get mad at me. I'm going to be very nice here today, and I'll pass it over to Luke. Luke, what's your thoughts when you hear this?
Yeah, I can be a little bit more unfiltered. I'll see, let it fly. So firstly, I think the little Yoda lady, Janet Yellen, I think she said something really interesting there. I actually thought, so Andrew Ross Sorkin, he's a little bit of a Bitcoin critic, a Bitcoin denier, a Bitcoin hater, a Bitcoin skeptic. I love how he framed that question. And I think he kind of actually caught Janet Yellen off guard. Did you see her face kind of like, she had that look in her eyes when she knew she was getting kind of cornered in the schoolyard? I thought that was kind of funny. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. But again, these guys have been anti-Bitcoin for a long time now. I'm shocked that she's like just still a person in power. I think maybe there's some interesting things happening there if we start to consider, hang on a minute, Trump's been in office for 6 months. Why is Janet Yellen still the head of the Treasury? I don't know, but I do think that's interesting that she's getting called out. She's, again, been wrong about Bitcoin for so long. And I think this is just another moment to remember that the experts, they're always wrong. The experts said Bitcoin was going to fail. All of the experts, for example, was it Steve Mnuchin who said like 5 years ago, I can promise you in 5 years, I won't be talking about Bitcoin. It'll be irrelevant. Now look, we're talking about creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve in America, the biggest nation state around the world. I think it's insane just how quickly the kind of windows have kind of, what is it, the Overton window has been shifted. And I think it's good to always remember what the experts said 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years ago. Because so many people will be thinking, okay, Jamie Dimon is flipping bullish on Bitcoin, creating crypto-backed loans. You know, who cares? I've seen lots of banks talk about Bitcoin, dabble in Bitcoin. But when you have the full context of, hang on a minute, Jamie Dimon, one of the world's largest bankers, was literally calling Bitcoin an index of money laundering, a scam, a decentralized Ponzi scheme. And then just a year ago, he said he was never going to talk about it again. All of a sudden, when you have all of that context, you're like, hang on a minute. Now he's flipping bullish in Bitcoin. Just makes the more recent news all the more meaningful. So, whenever I see these clips of, the experts fumbling and bumbling their way through yet another mainstream media interview, I think it's just a reminder that they were wrong on Bitcoin and they are still wrong on Bitcoin, and they will eat their humble pie.
Actually, Luke, before I pass it over to Eric, I might take a little contrarian view on that. I don't think that they're necessarily wrong on Bitcoin. I just think they're terrified of you using Bitcoin. And this is why they, talk their bag, which is fiat money. This is why they always FUD Bitcoin. They try to scare people away from holding Bitcoin, because if you hold Bitcoin or enough people hold Bitcoin, then the scam, the jig is up here. And so they come out here and kind of pretend like they don't understand what's going on. But I think in private conversations, they probably totally get what is at stake. And, they roll out here, and maybe that's why her little portion on Squawk Box felt so inauthentic, and it seemed like she was having a hard time even talking about it. It's because they probably have two differing opinions, privately what they think and then publicly what they have to say. But anyways, I want to get Eric's take on this.
It's cute. I mean, that's really the summary of everything I'm thinking right now. It's cute. To see that and to hear it, anytime someone in power talks about Bitcoin and regulation in the same sentence, I think it's cute. They don't understand what's really going on. And it's whether it's ignorant or it's intentional or it's accidental or they're too set in their ways or they've been asked, on their job description not to look at it from a certain angle. Like, those are all true and possibles. But at the end of the day, like, we got to look at the fundamental, and the fundamentals are that there was a demand created globally for something to balance the inflation that happened when we were off the gold standard and when we were off the Bretton Woods system and when inflation started, skyrocketing. Like, when those political decisions happened back, with the Nixon shock and everything, there was a demand that was created, right? You go and mess with a market. And fundamentally, we have to just look objectively. And I hope that we all agree that markets run on supply and demand, not on any sort of external control, particularly government control. If the world runs on supply and demand, and there was a demand in World War I, World War II to fix monetary problems, which was, obviously was decided at some point to try and quote unquote fix it by removing the American dollar from the gold standard in order to print our way out of it, and which has never worked before. But for some reason that was the conclusion, right? And so gold standard was abolished, and when you mess with supply and demand, you can't mess with one side of the equation and not mess with the other. That's mathematics, right? 1 equals 1. If you remove 0.5 from one side, then it affects the other side of the equation. And so when supply of when we changed the monetary system and removed gold from our foundational anchor point for money, we ended up changing the demand and increasing that demand for something that would balance it. And of course, time goes on, decades goes on, cypherpunk mailing, like all this discussion, all these experiments, and we end up with the ultimate supply to fill that demand. The demand is to find balance to the monetary system and to reduce corruption and to decrease inflation and give us more control. The supply ultimately came in the form of Bitcoin. And so when we see a politician or anyone in power, any individual at all, talking about regulating Bitcoin or filling the blank about Bitcoin without addressing the core problem, right? The core problem is inflation. The core problem is corruption. The core problem is manipulation of money supply. And without addressing that, there is no other alternative solution than Bitcoin, in my mind. Right? You can't have a politician come up, and any politician, whether Janet or otherwise, come in and say, oh, we're going to regulate Bitcoin, or we're going to change this, or we're going to do this, without addressing the core problem. If let's say 20 years ago, if the world went back on the gold standard, is it like, would Bitcoin have even come out? I don't know, but it would have been a threat to Bitcoin for sure. If our current politicians had addressed the core issue, which is manipulation of money supply, then there would be perhaps less demand for a solution, less demand for Bitcoin. But instead of fixing that demand, they actually just made it stronger by printing more and more and more, and having bigger and bigger bills that continuously, increase inflation and increase that demand. And so, yeah, in summary, I think it's cute. And when we talk about, Luke, you're mentioning about fear a little bit. My other business, I run billboards, and that's like, fear is the motivator. Fear is the message that any politician usually ends up diverting to, or any critic ends up diverting to. And so it's common. I just think shows like this, we focus on the solution and focus on the primaries is where we need to stay focused.
100%. I couldn't agree more. You said that great, Eric. This is what Nico and I privately, and of course on the show, talk about all the time. It's like, look, a lot of people can point out the problems, but very few people are pointing towards the solution. And, we get a lot of flack here on Simply Bitcoin, whether it's because we venture out into political groups or political conversations and cultural conversations. And it's like, guys, it all boils down to, hey, the money is broken and we need to fix the money. The fundamental base layer of society is the money here. And until we can take back control of that money and more people use a sound, hard money, everything that you may not like will be perpetuated into infinity until more people are saving and using Bitcoin. So, Eric, couldn't agree more. Anyways, guys, I'm going to rip through 2 stories here in the news because I really want to talk with Eric about his new book about to come out. So you can tell Eric's got a really good grasp of what's going on here. So I'm going to rip through the news, and then we're going to go into the culture so that we can just give Eric the platform to talk about what he's working on. So stick around for 1 second.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Yellen, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. They've issued $9 billion in loans to over 10,000 customers since 2018. I absolutely love these guys. Not only do I have an account with them, but I also have a loan. And what I love about them is that there are no monthly payments, and you could pay back the loan at any time. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you'll have cash in your account within 24 hours. Over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or sat of customer money. Go to learn.ledden.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Cold Card. If you're serious about self-custody, Cold Card is the best Bitcoin hardware wallet. There is no second best. The Cold Card Q is the ultimate air-gapped Bitcoin signing device, complete with a full keyboard, large screen, camera, NFC support, and much more. Do you prefer something sleeker? The MK4 is trusted by hardcore Bitcoiners around the world. Both are built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners, secure and open source. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 5% off with promo code SIMPLY. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today with Cold Card.
All right, guys, get yourself one of these sexy things in orange. These one, I've seen all the colors, but this one is my favorite. Actually, I haven't seen the glow in the dark one though. But you know, scan the QR code, use the promo code simply to get 5% off. Get yourself one, guys. It's all about self. Actually, remember yesterday, not enough people are taking self-custody. You need to get yourself a cold card and take self-custody. This is the way. All right. So first news story. Again, I'm going to rip through this, guys, because I really want to give Eric some time for the culture. But we got this coming through this morning. PNC Bank, which is one of the largest banks in the U.S. I think it's the 6th largest U.S. bank with about $555 billion in assets, just partnered with Coinbase to announce a strategic partnership to advance digital asset solutions and expanding bank services. I'm not going to break the whole thing down, but I'll just kind of read the first paragraph. PNC Bank today announced a strategic partnership with Coinbase aimed at expanding access to trusted, secure, and innovative digital asset solutions to PNC's banking clients and institutional investors. PNC will also provide select banking services to Coinbase, reflecting both companies' commitment to a more resilient digital financial system. Yada, yada, yada. You guys know what's going on. And really, Luke and I have been kind of covering this for a while. The fact that we're seeing the banks come into Bitcoin, one, it does make us a little uncomfortable. But as we said in the beginning of the show, this is that stamp of approval. This is basically them bending the knee, acknowledging, hey, this Bitcoin thing isn't going away. Maybe we should participate in this or else we will get left behind like the dinosaurs did and go extinct. So you're seeing more and more of this happen this year. I think it's even hard for me to count how many dominoes have fallen this year because it seems like literally every bank has bent the knee to Bitcoin. So we got another one. Yes, I am not a Luke trolling in the chat over here. Yo, chill out, bro. Chill.
I can't chill
I lost my train of thought. Go, Luke.
I got it for you, Opti. I can't chill because of all of these banks doing backflips on Bitcoin. We've got Standard Chartered, a $1.2 trillion bank, openly predicting we're going to see 200,000 big ones in front of the Bitcoin price this year in 2025. We've got, like we've talked about at length today, we've got Jamie Dimon. But then, of course, we got Deutsche Bank, $800 billion European giant, also beginning to roll out Bitcoin trading. We've got Charles Schwab, another multi-trillion-dollar bank that's very Bitcoin curious. Again, I think we're just starting to see the signs that, hey, we got a multi-$100 trillion industry here that is designed to store the savings for everyone on the planet, and they're all buying Bitcoin. They're openly saying, okay, the money that we're supposed to store safely for you, whether it's US dollars, Canadian dollars, or Australian bucks, it's worthless. We're going for the escape valve. We are betting that the money in your bank account today, it's not going to be worth a nickel in 10 years. So we're going to be buying Bitcoin. That's what kind of has me feeling a little bit spicy right now, Opti. I'm just bullish that yet again, we're seeing another domino fall. And again, 5 years ago, if you had told me, okay, in 2025, Luke, we'd have nation states competing over who can create a strategic Bitcoin reserve first. We'd have people like Jamie Dimon openly making Bitcoin backflips and quietly buying hundreds of millions of dollars of MicroStrategy. And if you had told me we'd have 150 public companies right now squatting on a million Bitcoin and BlackRock's even holding 3% of the Bitcoin supply themselves and going on sending their head chief Larry Fink onto the national news and saying that Bitcoin's a international asset, it's a legitimate asset, and it's digitizing gold, I would have told you the price of Bitcoin's $5 million a coin. But hey, we're here at what? 120 big ones, and that is our opportunity, and that is our asymmetry to kind of buy Bitcoin while we're waiting for its fair value to actually be reflected in the market.
Luke, even when you try not to be bullish, you're like, yeah, it's 2025. It should be $5 million Bitcoin today. What's going on here? Anyways, Eric, what's your thoughts on this partnership between PNC and Coinbase? And look, we're not the biggest fans of Coinbase, but, you know, this is news happening in the space. So, Eric, what's your thoughts on this?
You know, I might sound like a record on repeat here, but I come back always to the fundamentals and the narrative and the gap of time between where we're at today and when Bitcoin reaches its end goal. And all of this stuff is inevitable. There's going to be dozens and hundreds and even thousands of more partnerships with major corporations all across the globe. It's inevitable. Some of them are going to be really interesting. Some of them are going to suck. All of them are going to be controversial and worth having discussions around. And to me, it's just all bullish. It's all positive. It's all representative of a market and a population that recognizes that Bitcoin is not going away, that there is a demand that needs to be filled, that we can either get on that train or fall behind. And that the future is going to be including Bitcoin as a primary, just like automobiles became a primary. And like Luke was saying about how cell phones became a primary, Bitcoin is becoming a primary. And of course, Bitcoin is a primary already for all of us here that are listening to the show today. And as we know, this is just a small, tiny percentage of the overall world population. And that's just going to keep growing and growing. So I'm very bullish on it. You know, is it weird that there's partnerships with Coinbase, and what's the history of Coinbase and how deep do we go into that? We can, you know, poke holes at it all day long. And at the end of the day, if we, you know, look at that tree as a tree and, you know, criticize its leaves, there's infinite number of criticisms that could come out. But if we zoom out and look at the forest, it's all just part of the next steps. You know, in the future, Coinbase might not really have a market at some point in the future when people understand that shitcoins are shitcoins for a reason and start calling them shitcoins on purpose intentionally with a comprehension of what that means, right? Maybe Coinbase won't even be around anymore. So why waste too much time arguing and debating about where it's at today? Because they're essentially, along with everyone else, is supporting the narrative of a Bitcoin future. And that to me gets me really excited. It's why I'm here in the space. It's why I've, you know, adjusted my life to be revolving around it as a primary. You know, and I've been through different rabbit holes, and I'm not proud of all of them, but they've ultimately all just led towards the one, you know, ultimate conclusion that Bitcoin is the primary. It's the way, and it's what gets me excited. That's why I'm here.
Love it, Eric. Guys, I'm gonna make an audible here. I do have another news story, but I just realized the time, so we're gonna go talk with Eric about what he's working on. I think that's gonna be an interesting combo. I'll save to the other news story for tomorrow. So. Well, you know, we'll be right back.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our partner, bitcoinben.io. If you're into freedom, Bitcoin, and building a real community, this is for you. Gain exclusive access to real-world, members-only, private clubs across the globe, featuring poker nights, expert-led classes, co-working spaces, educational meetups, live events, and more. Current locations include Sarasota, Nashville, Boston, Dallas, Las Vegas, and St. Louis, with new clubs launching soon in West Palm Beach, Scottsdale, Alabama, and beyond. Not to mention Bitcoin Ben's resorts in El Salvador. There's 3 of them, and they're absolutely beautiful. You'll also get access to the first fully backed Bitcoin bank with fiat ramps and savings accounts. It's called Private Key Bank, and you guessed it, it's based out of El Salvador. Go peer-to-peer with Bitcoin bulk buys, tap into home equity for long-term Bitcoin growth, and join their exclusive mining pools if you're interested in mining. What are you waiting for? Head over to bitcoinben.io, join today, where Bitcoin meets freedom.
All right, before we move on, I want to give a huge shout out to Ron. Love you, Ron. Super chat at $10. I love you. Okay, appreciate you, man. Anyways, Eric, man, let's just talk about what you're working on. But I do kind of want to ask you your rabbit hole story. How did you end up writing this book called Coin Lords? And then you can go into, I do have your website where you can pull up what it's about and all that stuff. But I'd like to know how this came about.
Yeah, so the short version, my journey to Bitcoin started when I was a little kid. My parents split up when I was, 3, and they didn't just split up physically, they split up ideologically. My mom chose the direction of, you could say, like the Ayn Rand objectivist style, hardworking, self-made person. She left everything to him and worked overtime hours nonstop, like just crazy, crazy hours. And I kind of blame her for being a workaholic today in a friendly way. But that was her direction, is to take ownership of our life, take ownership of where we are, and build something that we're proud of. Right now, my dad, on the other hand, he went on the other direction. He went deep, deep down the socialist style rabbit hole of looking for money handouts and manipulating the system. And it sucks if he's listening to it, but it's the truth, right? And he essentially became the embodiment of a mooch on the system, right? Always looking for another way to capitalize on the welfare system. And so, he never paid child support, and always captured money from our tax dollars. So literally, my mom is out there working her ass off nonstop, paying for all of us in our life, and paying tax dollars to a system that then redistributed it to my biological father, who hardly ever worked ever and just capitalized and stayed at home in most of the time. And so that ideological split represented a imbalance and a problem in the world that didn't make sense to me then, and really didn't make sense to me up until I started to understand the philosophical principles of Ayn Rand and objectivism, and I started to deep dive into it. And that's when I really started to understand the difference between a producer and a mooch, or a creative mind versus a leech. And that clarity stayed with me forever. And this is way before Bitcoin, came out, obviously. And so when Bitcoin did come out, my friends did a terrible job explaining it to them, and I'm very angry at them to this day, said lovingly. But in 2017, something struck a chord, and a friend of mine made me look at it and do my own research. And so I think it was somewhere, it was January, February of 2017. And I thought, what is this thing? So I started researching and learning about what is Bitcoin, podcasts, books, everything I could throw myself into to understand the information at play. I wasn't back then, honestly, I didn't really comprehend that Bitcoin in relation to current fiat would increase in value in that way. It wasn't really part of my mindset. I was just curious of what is this thing. And the more I researched, the more I realized that this is, you could say, a step towards an Ayn Randian or objectivist, or like an Atlas Shrugged sort of John Galt's Gulch type of a future. And that really struck a chord with me. I'm like, oh my God, like if Bitcoin was invented back when Ayn Rand was writing Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead, is it possible that she would consider Bitcoin being the prime currency? And I don't know. I don't know. I never had a chance to talk with her, but I think she would at least consider it seriously. And that to me is striking. So I aligned with objectivism, which led me to align with Bitcoin ideology. And so that I'm all in. I thought I'll have to do this. Back then I owned a construction company. I had 60 guys working for me. It was a wonderful experience. And I sold that in 2018. But back then I was like, well, let's make a mining farm. So I converted my house, into my garage, into a mining farm, all the electrical upgrades. I was shipping in ventilation from across the world and testing out and experimenting with how this works. And so you imagine, like, I'm sitting there upside down, plugging in Ethernet cables and, home custom fitting a home rig with soundproofing that all failed, by the way. It was always loud. But I'm sitting there and thinking about Bitcoin in the future. And I started to have these ideas about, a story. Right. And I'm a nerd at heart. I play Magic the Gathering. I collect comic books. I love that stuff. And so the story started coming out of these random ideas of a future, a sci-fi future of what Bitcoin would look like on our society, on our species, and how that projects into where we're headed as a species. And so I started jotting down ideas in 2017. Some of my friends told me to not pursue it. They said comic books are a waste of time. There's so many things you could do. Never listen to those types of naysayers, right? Don't let your memes be dreams. Anyways, fast forward. The story kept evolving. I kept writing down notes. And last year I thought, it's time to do something about this. It's time to share with the world a vision of what Bitcoin looks like when it reaches its end goal, and the benefits that it means to all of us everywhere. Because we have to avoid a George Orwellian 1984 future. That's what we're doing. That's what Bitcoin's trying to do. We don't want to live in an authoritarian future. We don't want to live in a regime that suppresses and manipulates and leads us ultimately to self-destruction. We all want to live and be happy. I think no matter who you are and what side of the fence you're on, we can all agree, first of all, we want to live. We want to be happy, and we want to have a good future for our children. And if we can agree on at least that, then we get to debate, well, how do we get there? And that's where Bitcoin comes into play. And that's where, philosophical discussions come into play, like, objectivism. And so, I made the decision to just go ahead and put it all into a story called Coin Lords. And Coin Lords represents the future. Like, what happens when Bitcoin does reach its end goal? What happens when productive minds are liberated to create value like never before? Where does that lead us? And it's more than just Bitcoin at that point, right? So if Bitcoin is fundamentally required in order to remove corruption and liberate a free mind to produce, well, then what happens if we fail? Obviously, we just self-destruct and we're all gone. But if we succeed, what does it mean when a productive mind is liberated to produce? And well, we can look at AI, for example, right? Like, AI is accelerating everything that we touch. And if a free mind is open to continue expanding on it, then what does AI have in terms of implications on protein folding and extending human life and looking at reprinting organs? I mean, anyone that Googles protein folding technology right now, and I'm talking about folding our 20 amino acids, and you'll see that we can print 3D print skin and cartilage that matches almost any DNA structure in the world. And that's a simple printing mechanism. Printing organs is a whole different level, but that's what's next. And so when we're able to start reproducing our organs that are failing, or fixing brain cells, or reprinting a human arm from someone that's lost in a war mission, then we do extend human life, and human life starts to exceed 100 years, maybe 150. And this isn't sci-fi. This is fact today. We are extending human life. There is a growth curve of how human life is extending. And I imagine, what's a world where Einstein is sitting there talking with Stephen Hawking, because they're both still alive, because that's the new norm. We don't peak at human potential at age 50. Maybe we peak at age 100, right? I know that sounds a little, crazy today, but you just do the research, and you'll see that's the trajectory that we're on. And so the same thing happens when you look at nanotechnology and quantum computing and every facet of human ingenuity, right? When nanobots can go and build a structure in hours instead of weeks or months or years. When we can send a ship to Mars, I mean, we're going to be in Mars at some point in the next 10, 20 years. That's pretty factual, I think. And so if we think about sending, this might take a bit longer, but in 50 to 100 years, if we can send a group of nanobots to a planet that we're exploring and have it use the planet's resources to build some structures before we arrive, then we can start looking at becoming an interplanetary species. But again, none of that can happen if we cripple under corrupt government, under our own money supply. If inflation drives us all to poverty and mass starvation and crazy warfare, none of this is possible. So when Bitcoin reaches its end goal and corruption is abolished and independent wealth is able to be reinvested to create a better future, then we end up in a new universe in whatever time frame in the future, where we are an interplanetary species, where we do get to look at politics indifferently, and we look at extending human life, and we get to look at how much value can we produce as a species individually and as a group. And that's what Coin Lords really explore. So the universe here that's represented here is a multi-planetary species that humanity ultimately does become. A lot of it is sci-fi, but it's all based on fact today. And it's called Coin Lords because I'm exploring different type of character archetypes. The primary is the Bitcoin maximalist. Right, the Bitcoin maximalist lives on planet Satoshi and represents ideals that I think we can all resonate to, that you'll see references to in V for Vendetta and in Atlas Shrugg's writing. And when we become an interplanetary species, not all planets stay on the light side. Some of them drift off back into authoritarian regimes, and power comes back up in different and manifest in different ways. So some of those planets drift back to authoritarian regimes, and there's little battles. And so what does a Bitcoin miner look like in 200 years from now? What does nanotechnology look like and fusion technology look like in powering the highest hash rates? And are there planets that become ultimately just mining planets? So these two girls here are twins, and they were born on planet Gox. And planet Gox was invaded by the Hooded Ones and ultimately destroyed. And so obviously we all know Mount Gox. So I'm trying to represent real world events into a storyline. I'm trying not to invent anything with my creative mind, and really just adopt real world events into a story. Some of you might recognize this guy. There's real characters from the Bitcoin world world right now that are inside the book. BTC Sessions on there, Dave Bradley's in there. And I want every character and every story to represent a real world story happening today. And let it be all community driven. So these two girls were born on planet Gox. The planet was invaded and destroyed by the Hooded Ones. They were this one here in blue. She was rescued by the miners, and this is kind of a lore similar to, you could see, like the Mandalorian lore of in Star Wars lore. And so the miners live on a planet that's covered in ice. It's a full ice planet, and they bore down to the center and create a tunnel system where they install their miners and borrow the radiant coolant from the planet to cool the miners, and in return the heat of the miners melts the surface ice around the planet, which ultimately transforms it into a thriving ecosystem. And we get to explore what that means. And the miners get to hide amongst the bedrock of the planet, so no one even really knows that they're there. And then anyway, so there's, you can see how there's like an extended story and adoption of real world events. So like the day trader, people that are just sitting looking at prices all day long. The day trader is like the mystics of the storyline. And the day trader has this ability, this day trader here, that has the ability to sense and feel fear and greed in any market or in any individual, and that guides them to be making certain decisions in advance of other people. And the strongest masters of the day trader lore can actually project fear and greed into individuals or entire populations, crumbling or strengthening an economy at their will. So I get to explore a little more of the anarchistic philosophy. I know that a lot of Bitcoiners are anti-government, period, and lean more into the anarchistic philosophy. And so I get to explore that in the day trader lore as well. And then there's the Hooded Ones, which are essentially the hackers of the story. Now, does that mean that they're inherently bad? No. Does it mean they're inherently good? No. It means that they're a mix. I mean, you could say that anyone on the Cypherpunk mailing list was a hacker at one point. Perhaps that's a fact. But does that mean good or bad? Well, it's kind of neutral. It kind of means that they're rogue and going outside the system. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's not. But I want to represent a true character and a true lore that represents both sides of the stories, both sides of the debate for each of the characters in it. And one of the other character, the fifth one, is the developer. And I really look at the developer. You see over here, I have the Atlas statue that you see from the Rockefeller downtown Manhattan, and it's really symbolic, a symbolic representation of Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand's work. And so to me, the developer, the software developer, is one of the biggest producers of the world in the future, running all of the technology that we use every day, building the network and maintaining it. And there's two sides to that story too. There's good developer, there's bad developers, there's civil wars that happen, and all of that's represented inside the comic, which is a prequel to the TV series and the movie, because a comic is just a storyboard for a movie and for a TV show. The idea is to build a truly mainstream adopted TV show that people can gravitate to, built 100% on Bitcoin ideology and Bitcoiner philosophy, to represent where we're going, to explain where we're going. I imagine a world where we sit down with our family or our friends and we say, hey, what do we want to watch on Netflix? And you go through all the options and you end up, hey, let's watch the Bitcoin show because it's fun. It's action-packed, it's sci-fi, and it represents things that are happening right now today. You might recognize some of the products that are in the pages or some of the products that are inside the story. So right now, we got the first issue out. We launched it at the Bitcoin Rodeo in Calgary just last month. I'll be in Finland coming up, and then out in Montreal coming up too. And I'm trying to build this as a full show. I have an 8-minute teaser of an animated version of a low-budget adaptation of the comic up on YouTube. It's the only video on there. So the Coin Lords HQ YouTube has that 8-minute trailer and teaser, and anyone can just watch and feel the mood of what I'm trying to create. Look, it's low budget. I bootstrapped it. It's cringy in some ways, but it's also, the feedback I got was really cool. I got to show it to 150 people in a movie theater style environment in Calgary at the Bitcoin Rodeo, and we're going to be showing this full 8-minute enhanced version in Finland as well. And now I want to take that and make it a real movie, a real show, something that can go fully mainstream. So I really appreciate you letting me rant here a little bit.
No, that was incredible. I absolutely love that. I love sci-fi. I'm a huge sci-fi guy. I love sci-fi movies. And really, While you were going, it reminded me of one of the things, I forget where I first heard it or who, the quote can be attributed to, but there is, a lot of Bitcoiners, I think, like to read nonfiction. They're like in economic textbooks and they're reading, the Broken Money or the Big Print or the Bitcoin Standard. But I absolutely love to read fiction because, like you said, you're able to use fiction to kind of, project where things are going and get different like worlds created, and people can really immerse themselves in them and see like a whole new vantage point. And it really is able to tell a different story than just a nonfiction book could. And so, man, kudos to you, Eric. I'm super excited to see the finished product here, the finished, I don't know, anime, maybe, I don't know, TV show, whatever it is. But I did see in the chat, people were wondering, excuse me, can they get one of these? Like how can they get themselves a comic book?
Yeah, right. The website is in development right now. It's launching very soon. This all happened very fast. So the easiest way is to just, DM me on Twitter. It's CoinLords HQ. You can, find the CoinLords there. There's a Substack group. There's I just started a Nostr, but it's all very, very new. So just send me a DM on Twitter. And look, like anyone that sends me a DM in the next, 48 hours, I'll pick someone and give them a free comic, right? I'll send it to you for free. But that's the easiest way to buy it right now. Like it's Lightning payments only, and I can just we can sort that out manually. If you want to buy one, I'm happy to send one to you. And yeah, but anyone that sends me a DM on the CoinLords HQ Twitter, I'll pick someone and give you a free copy, but that's the easiest way to buy one for now. It's all very early. Like I'm bootstrapping all of it. I have like no budget in building it and just a passion project. So any help goes a really long way. And until the website's launched, yeah, the DM is the best way to buy one.
Absolutely incredible, man. Well, kudos to you. And I love the story that you were kind of laying out there. Not just the story itself, but the inspirations for the story. I think this is going to be super fun. I can't wait to sit down and read it myself. But Luke, you were asking about this earlier. What's your thoughts now hearing the whole story, what Eric's building, where it's going?
Yeah, so I always encourage people to zoom out. And as soon as Eric said intergalactic species, that kind of made my ears pick up a little bit because, again, I'm a big believer that I think there have been other civilizations on other planets previously. I think Alex Spetsky's got a really interesting thesis that kind of explains why we haven't seen life on other planets. And I purely think it's because we haven't discovered energy money before. So I do think energy money and the creation of Bitcoin, it is the biggest technological innovation in human history. I've spent way too many hours writing 50,000 words on paper, writing my own book, The Economic Singularity. I do think Bitcoin's bigger than fire. It's bigger than the internet. It's bigger than the printing press. It's bigger than the wheel. And I think it is going to be the thing that propels us to actually becoming a type 1 civilization and actually becoming an intergalactic species. So I'm super excited to read the book. I love sci-fi Bitcoin books myself. So I'm kind of excited to get my hands on a copy. So yeah.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Okay, Eric, we're about to wrap up. Excuse me. But before we wrap up, I want to give you the floor for one final message. It could be about the book. It could be about life. It could be about going intergalactic in the future. What would be the final message to the audience?
I'd love to talk more about the comic or about my billboard company and all that stuff. But, if I'm just being from the heart, like at the end of the day, I said it earlier, like don't let your memes be dreams. There's so much creativity in everyone listening right now to the show. And you know what it is. I don't know what it is, but you do know what it is. And I'd love to see that creative potential come out, right? We all have something that we can contribute to this world. And it's so important that we do. Like imagine if Satoshi Nakamoto, individual or group or otherwise, imagine if they chose to let that meme of a solution to the money supply. Imagine if they allowed the meme, the idea of Bitcoin to just not come into the real world. Imagine if they sat there on it and didn't take action, right? That we would be in a completely different world. Imagine if Henry Ford didn't go and do what he did with the assembly line, or fill in the blank. And I don't want to be in a spot in 20 years from now or 10 years from now where one of you didn't do that action that you want to build. And we have to live in a world that is missing it, right? And I want to see a world where we all take action on our great ideas and support each other in doing it. So if there was a final message there, it's like, look, we're all united on this shared vision of a better future, of a Bitcoin future, of an ideology that supports a more prosperous species, you know, a more prosperous humanity. And I just want to anchor it in. Go in there and do it, right? Like I dropped out of high school. I've had multiple companies. Some of them fail, some of them succeed. You know, some things I'm proud of, some things I'm not proud of. It happens, right? And at the end of the day, we just keep moving forward, keep failing forward, keep building forward, keep growing as an individual, and see those memes become reality. And anyone can just send me a DM anytime. I'm happy to like incubate with some of the stuff you got going on. I'll help wherever I can. I'm sure that, you know, everyone around here would probably help as well. So that would be my final takeaway message. Even though I'd love to talk more about comics and about billboards and all this stuff, just, you know, go out there and be the best version of yourself that you know how to be. And tomorrow, do it again. And tomorrow, do it again. If you get stuck, reach out for help. And help is out there, right? There is light at the end of that tunnel. So there's my little takeaway message for you.
Absolutely love it, Eric. Actually, let's do your billboard real quick, and then we'll wrap up, because that was a cool idea. Let's do that real quick, and then that'll get the audience involved in this. So let's talk about that for 1 minute, and then we'll wrap up today's show.
Sure. Yeah. So you could say my day job, my real business, I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called The Public Board. And it's an idea I had a while ago of, you know, when I had my construction company. Well, the short version, I take massive, giant digital billboards and let people put whatever you want on them. Right. So I own a board in North Dakota right now. I had boards that I brought to different conferences. We're going to be in LA at the another major event that I'm going to announce soon. And we're about to launch in downtown Nashville, the giant, huge, if you Google the Nashville sign, there's only one answer. It's a giant 38-foot by 38-foot massive digital billboard right outside right on the outskirts of downtown. And I let anyone put anything on it. And often I let people do it for free so that you can help, you know, with shoutouts. And then, you know, I try and do paid spots. But the idea is it's the world's first crowdsourced billboard. Anyone in the world has access, and anyone can vote on each other's content to see which piece of content or which message gets displayed more often. I put up there Bitcoin equals better government. You know, I put up there a whole bunch of stuff for the Bitcoin rodeo and the SAT market, and you can put memes and just little happy birthdays and shoutouts. And so the idea is to, you could say, democratize access to billboards. Previously, and most people listening right now have never been on a billboard before. Why? Because it's cornered by large corporate spenders. It's not really a public medium accessible to the average human. And that's a problem to me. I think it's annoying to drive home and see these massive boards forcing ads down my throat that I did not consent to seeing. And I can't put an ad blocker like I can on Google. I can't put, you know, block certain URLs like I can on Facebook. It's just there. And the only way to avoid that ad in my face is to close my eyes while driving. It's not a really good idea. I have to look at those ads, not by choice. So if we switch that narrative and let massive billboards across the world be populated by general public content, then it's different, because now you people have, like anyone listening, that has control over what's displayed. You get to see what's on those. You get to control what people see on those boards. You get to control what's in your neighborhood. You get to control what your kids see when you're driving them to school. And that's the foundation. So we have some interesting angel investor backing from some major names, you know, in United States, and we're just launching right now in the Nashville sign. It's the biggest sign. It's one of the biggest signs in all of North America. And I coordinate free photos, drone videos. Anyone can just post anything they want on it, and I'll coordinate and make everything else really, really easy. So that's the public board, and that's the billboard world that I'm focused on. It's like part of the decentralized future, and it's something I'm really passionate about. There's been a lot of hurdles in the company to get to where we are, and you know, I have other partners, and we kind of debate sometimes of what kind of content we should put up there and not put up there. It's difficult. It's a process, but at the end of the day, it's letting anyone listening right now to put any message you want on some of North America's biggest digital billboard assets that exist, and giving you photos and videos for your social media, for your keepsakes, for whatever you want to do. So that's the core message there. And again, anyone that sends me a message, you send me a message on, let's just say the Coin Lords HQ, send me a message there of what message you want on a big billboard. I'll pick a couple and I'll put them live, and I'll send you a photo of that massive billboard displaying your message. And you know, there's no cost to that at all. It's just a fun way to interact with everyone. So that's a little bit about billboards.
That's absolutely awesome, guys. So blow up his DMs. Let's get a crowdsourced Simply Bitcoin billboard with your guys' favorite quotes. Thank you so much for coming on, Eric. Super, super inspired by what you're working on and what you're doing, man. Thanks for coming on today. This was a great rip. And Luke, of course, thanks for filling in on the short notice. And Luke will be here tomorrow as well. So, you know, we're going to be super bullish on tomorrow's episode as well. All right. Eric, hang out behind the scenes for a second. Let me wrap up the show. You as well, Luke. Actually, Luke, you can run. I'll talk to you in the morning. You already know the deal. But guys, we love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Smash the like button, comment on this video, and of course, subscribe. We drop the most and the best content out of any Bitcoin channel, period. On that note, it's been your host, Opti, for today, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace out, guys.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.